NECA gifts us with another golden angel. Here's your look at the new NECA toys, Predator 2 Ultimate Elder Predator. Elder Predator, aka Golden Angel Greyback. The Elder Predator, known as Greyback, originally visited Earth in the 18th century, encountering a crew of murderous pirates and claiming his first human kills. Years later, he'd go on to gather a hunting team which would amass an impressive collection of alien trophies as they would travel uncharted portions of the galaxy in pursuit of the most dangerous prey. Their hunts were usually so far from home that they'd earned the nickname Lost Tribe. The Lost Tribe were just as much explorers as they were hunters, and Greyback developed a reputation for taking down the most exotic species in the galaxy. He'd visit Earth once again in 1997, bringing his team of skilled Yautjas for various hunts across the globe. This would culminate with the loss of their youngest hunter in Los Angeles. It wasn't the first time the Lost Tribe had suffered a death, and it was unlikely to be the last. But this is the thrill of the hunt, as Greyback knows better than any other. Now, here's a Predator that knows a little something about pirates. Before we get a closer look at the brand new Predator 2 Ultimate Elder Predator, I'd like to first thank the folks, yes, over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample we're about to have a look at. Following to that, let's grab the old tape measure. In this case, Elder Predator, Golden Angel, stands about 8 inches in height, or the figure's going to be about 20 centimeters tall. Of course, I did say that this is the second Golden Angel that we did get. The first one being the one actually pulled from the pages of the comic Predator 1718, in which that Predator first encounters pirate Raphael Adolini and gets that flintlock pistol that we eventually see in Predator 2. And also for comparison, seeing as we just recently had a look at him and all, I did also want to bring in this case, Snake Predator, so you guys can see that once again, they're using about the same size of body. They haven't changed or reinvented the wheel in that department, but definitely color changes are very notable between the two Predators on either side and the one in the middle we're about to have a look at. Suppose while we are on the topic of the 1718s and Captain Adolini and his crew, let's look at the flintlock pistol that eventually gets gifted to Elder Predator. It's molded here in brown plastic, with the flintlock parts as well as the majority of it cast in a beautiful decorated gold. And while the flintlock pieces actually don't move on the pistol, it can be at least wielded in his hand. Or I suppose you could also slot it in the provided, well, isn't so much a storage space for the flintlock pistol, but when it comes to certainly displaying Elder Predator, I'm planning just to kind of slot it into one of his little belt sashes here. A good place to store it for the meantime. The figure also comes included with quite a lot of other accessories. I suppose we could look at the fact he comes with a plasma caster shoulder-mounted cannon. Not much different here from normal plasma casters that we usually see with these Predator releases. It's molded here and cast here in a very, very dark gunmetal gray. Usually is also the case that the bottom of this does move back and forth. The top of it does have its own independent ball joint, so between the two, you can actually move the cannon around. There is connecting points. There's a little slot here right there, and there's a little bit of plastic lipped on the bottom of it that you can take the Predator figure and flip it around. And it's always usually the case, you always have to move the dreads out of the way. And there's a little slot right at the bottom, and then there's a neighboring slot to the top. And between those two, you just connect the plasma caster shoulder-mounted cannon onto top of that. Just make sure everything is in place, and then you can have that displayed with the figure as well. It will wreak a little havoc when it comes to changing out the heads. I'll excuse myself well in advance. I'm going to probably be taking that off when we look at the rest of the figure's head sculpts. But for right now, at least, the figure comes also included with a skull. You want more? Well, okay, the figure also comes included with a skull and spine. Choose which one you'd like to have displayed with the figure. The skulls seem very similar to one another. They're also equally well painted. They actually look like they're using a very similar type of color as well. The bone, really nicely done here, and you can even see, like, the touches of detail. They've added little tiny, all the little markings that normal skulls would have. Not that I really actually have a real one-to-one scale. Well, I have the one over there, but I'm not really allowed to touch that one. Anyways. The figure also does, like I said, this one does have the spine. The spine does seem like it has a little bit of give to it, but it doesn't look like it's got a wire frame. I think, if anything, it's just got a slightly bit of softer plastic added in there. But nice little included touch that, of course, get the skull. So you get yourself also the sword. The sword, short of just a little bit of silver that they've added to the end of it again, is mostly painted in a very dark gray. The hilt looks like it's been wrapped up in sort of a more shinier brown leather material. And there's a place, of course, to store this. I say of course, not that you may have necessarily known this, but there's actually a little sheath there on the side of the figure's body. It is the length of the sword, although to be honest, when you are trying to fit this actually into the sheath, you'll be running up against, obviously parallel to the torso of the predator. So all the time you're doing this, you're going to find yourself bending the blade. It does fit in there, although to be honest, it doesn't fit well. And a couple of times, flipping around to see if we can try the other way. There we go. It does fit in place, but of course, when you start to rotate the figure's body, which we will be looking at when we look at the posability part of this review, that of course is going to start to hit the hilt and may potentially bend it. So I have to remind myself. Everybody remind me? Thank you. Person in the back that had their hand up saying they were going to remind me. Just remind me that I have to take that sword out before I start moving the figure around. The figure of Elder also comes included with a bunch of swappable hands. Right now, he comes with some more exaggerated gestured hands, but if you prefer to have something being held in his hand, like for example, the spine would be good for this hand. If you want to have him holding the sword, for example, there's also this hand. And then between the two, there's also this hand too, which normally would, I think, been used for the smart discs that come included with the Predators. Not this time around because this Predator doesn't come included with one. But there's this. I suppose you could also use this particular hand for, say, holding the skull. Although in the case with the skull, you're really going to have to do a balancing act to ensure that the skull doesn't drop onto the floor. Yeah, that's already happened 3 times for me already. Anyways. The figure also comes included with a blast effect. The blast effect doesn't serve a purpose for the figure, but it does certainly serve a purpose for the plasma caster. You simply just take the little peg provided on the end of it, line up the hole that's there already, and when you plug it in, then you've got yourself a blast effect. Although the weight of it does cause the cannon to tilt forward. As you can see, it adds a much more weight to the front of it, and a lot of times it causes it just to kind of lean forward. I don't ever really display any of the Predator figures with these blast effects. It's fine and good, I think, to display them if you have like a really cool diorama, but I'm usually one that just likes to display these museum pose. I know, boring, on my shelf. The figure also comes included with some swappable head sculpts, and for that, I'm also going to bring in the original comic version of Golden Angel, so you can see the differences between the two heads. I suppose we'll start with this one. This is kind of more a traditional looking Predator head. I love the way they've finished this. It's quite more refined than the comic version we got before, although to look at the two, it does seem like they may have used the exact same mold and then of course just done up the touched details. Whereas this one definitely looks more like a metallic finish. This looks more like, well, it's still metallic, but it doesn't have, again, like the refined look that this one has. The dreads is also something that gets added some additional details that weren't already present on the original one. This one would have had the little links added there in there as well. Whereas this one's got some really nice additional braiding. Get a load of this. All softer plastic still on the back of the figure's hair. Really nice looking figure head sculpts though. And like I said, you can swap these out for the existing head that we're about to have a look at. If you prefer something though, a little bit more ridged to the top, there's also this one here as well. And in this case, actually, I have to bring in the Golden Angel Predator because this is actually the original comic version I have had on my shelf this whole time. And I've always had it displayed with this head sculpt. It's just too good to leave back in the packaging. So you can see the difference again between the two. This one went more really the coloring of a bronze or a penny color, whereas this goes more a color of the gold. The gold probably looks like it was painted over top of a darker plastic. And between that, you actually get this really nice two-tone effect of the darker gray and then just the dusting of the gold over top of it. It looks really good. And then again, like they've added a much more additional braiding on the back of the dreads, whereas the original one wouldn't have had that. This, again, the comic version. This, again, the more realistic version. But still, it seems to be the case that they've used the exact same head sculpts. Moving that out of the way, let's get now a closer look at Elder Predator. I'm just going to kind of move everything out of the way and pick up the figure here for a second. Again, I reminded myself I'm going to remove the plasma caster. And for this, I'm also going to remove the musket. We don't need that right now. And we're also going to unsheath the sword. Maybe don't make that noise in the process. Getting a closer look at Elder Predator. What a gorgeous figure this is. Taking what I feel to be, again, the original design, which, again, this is the comic version. So don't get confused the fact that, say, well, this one's clearly a more brighter yellow, but again, like this is supposed to be from the 1718 comics. This, again, would have been the more realistic movie Elder Predator. And I gotta say, like, the colors look so good on this guy. He sort of has a dusting overall from head to toe. you look at him and you think, okay, traditional looking predator, he's got traditional predator colors. But then when you look at it, it looks like all those colors have sort of been thrown at dusting and everything has sort of settled on the surface of the plastic. The head sculpt, again, is just fantastic on this figure. One thing it does inherit is not only the flintlock pistol, but it also has like these tiny little piercings you can see on the bottom of at least one of his mandibles. The other side as well has, again, very soft colors. The approach that they went with this figure is generally quite light in the way of the palettes. And you've got what there is of gray and dark black, again, is all very subtly added to this figure. While I'm sure that you could easily look at this and just assume it's probably the same head sculpt, I would assume it's the same head sculpt as most predators that have been released. It's, again, the refinement that has been added to this figure that I think that really makes this guy stand out, even though really his colors aren't bright at all. The grays, for example, blend very nicely into lighter grays and lighter whites that they've used here as well. Even like his armor is very more muted than the more traditional armors that we're used to seeing with predators. His dreads, for example, are more gray than the black. And again, you've got all this nice additional gold braiding that's intermingled in there as well. It's quite a party going on in the back of the figure's head sculpt. Again, you can see like all the additional texturing and all the additional detailing that they also added. Some of the cases of the dreads, for example, they're sort of bunched together. You can kind of see some additional decorated jewelry that they've added in there as well. It's one of the best head sculpts I've seen without having to swap right away to a helmeted head sculpt. This might be one of those cases that while I do still appreciate the fact that they would have included two extras, I might still just default to this one because it looks too good to be removed. Despite saying that, though, let's go ahead and remove the figure's head sculpt. I know I'm sounding like a hypocrite for saying this, but just to show you guys what it looks like, I'm just going to hold on to the torso for right now. Not give it a really strong yank, but just pull that right off to remove it from the post. When you're all removing it, though, just be careful because he's got all this stuff that's draped across his torso. One thing that will be lost if you're not too careful is this necklace. I did pull the head off already, and this necklace fell off. So just want to make sure it's there when you put the head back into place. I'm going to go with this head sculpt, this being my favorite of two, at least, of the helmets. I'm going to pop that in place. The reasons also why I wanted to show you is not only to change the head, but also to show you how the color does break up a little bit here. Where you have more of the softer colors of the gray being used for the majority of his body, and now you get all of a sudden this pop of gold. I don't know if the gold works as well for his body, because just again, to bring back in the comic version, this version of Golden Angel, I think the copper worked really well with the yellow. Although the yellow is so bright and unsightly, I think the copper worked quite well for it. This one, on the other hand, though, while I do like the look of the copper for the helmet, I think it looks a little jarring when you compare it to the rest of the figure's body. He's so pale, really, from like the neck down. And again, it's no fault to NECA necessarily. Like, it's painted so gloriously. But I just think like the colors for the helmet, at least, don't jive 100% for the rest of the figure's body. Maybe it's just me. You can let me know. One of the other things that the figure has also as well is that he's got the little wrist communicator here, the little wrist comm. This one actually, I don't think, now that I think about it, doesn't actually open up. He does have the little hose there that at least connects from the box to, of course, the rest of his arm. So when it comes to, of course, the articulation of the figure, just be careful. Even though he does have, in this case, a double hinge on the elbow, bending it too far will likely rip this right off. I, for some reason, thought that he already had this. I thought this was something that opened up. I must be thinking of another predator at the time. One thing that's also noted, as well as you can see, like there's the hole there for the shoulder, and there's a hole right here for the front of his chest. Normally, this would also have been a place where there would have been the connecting cable. In fact, actually, you know what? I've got this still on the comic version. It's still intact, but a lot of times, if you're not too careful, I'm guilty of it myself, you go to move the arm, and that rips right away. I mean, they've already done the job for you. It's not even there on the figure in the first place. Does have, again, the retractable blade on the one side. One thing on mine, at least, is that the blade seems really loose. It slides out all the times that I don't plan to have it slide out. And I've also noticed with this that the figure's elbows are a little loose. More on this side than it is on this side. Lower half of his body is pretty much still sticking to traditional predator molding, other than, again, like he's got the sheath there on the side that does have the skull there at the top. He's got some additional detailing down below. It looks like a really neat looking sheath. Not sure whether I still plan to display it with the sword sheathed inside, just because, again, like when it comes to the articulation of the figure, I'm worried moving it around, that's going to start to clip the hilt, and I don't want that to happen. Lower half of the figure is pretty much still the same. Again, I want to just say, like, they haven't reinvented anything when it comes to the wheel here of the Predator. Everything is pretty much still standard Predator, but the colors work very well for this particular figure release. For the articulation on this version of Predator, the Elder Predator, or Golden Angel, does have the head that rotates back and forth. It does look up and it does look down, and in between that, it rocks back and forth as well. Just, though, be careful of the necklace. Shoulders do rotate all the way around, no problems there. You can bring the elbows or bring the shoulders out, but they're really tight on my figure. In this case, I can only get to about 45 degrees. You probably can move it a little further than that, but I already have resistance. I'm already hitting resistance. I don't want to break it in the process. Figure does have a swivel in the bicep. The figure does have a double hinge on the elbow. A lot easier to do on this side. Just be careful on this side because, again, you've got the hose connecting from the forearm to the top, or the top plate there of his armor. Hands rotate also all the way around. He has an upper torso ball joint. He also has a lower torso ball joint that's just above the loincloth. I know some of you guys love the loincloths. He has a ball joint there, so you can also move it in two places, here and here. Legs do split out once again, and the figure does have a swivel at the top of the thigh. Does have a double hinge on the knee. And the figure does have articulation in the ankles, once again, up and down, rocking it back and forth. And through doing that, you'll also find yourself pricking your skin several times. He has a good spike sticking out the back of his heel. All in all, it's a great looking figure, but I think in a case like this, I almost feel as if, like, the helmet, you can tell me if I'm wrong down below. I'm well open to the idea if you guys disagree, but I honestly feel like the helmet, as good as it may have been painted, I don't know if it works as well with the figure's body. I feel almost like it worked better when it came to this version of Predator, even though he was much more garishly mustard yellow. I think, like, the copper color worked with the helmet better when it came to the rest of the figure's body. I don't know if it works as well necessarily with this version of Elder Predator, but I think for me, at least, when it comes to displaying this figure, as good as these helmets may have been that came included with them, I might still just default back to the original because it's too good, I feel, to leave back in the packaging. Elder Predator, or Golden Angel if you prefer, has been on my Predator radar for a while, and now finally getting this guy in hand, it delivers exactly what I would want for a more updated version of the comic version of Predator, the Elder Predator that we had already gotten before. The yellow one that I did bring in for comparisons, of course, is from Predator 1718, the comic book, so of course its color scheme is that more indicative of what you would expect from a comic book, not from, of course, an actual movie, to which what we get actually with this release. This version of Elder Predator still comes included with the accessories that you would expect by now to come include with all the Predator releases from NECA Toys. Plasma shoulder-mounted cannon. He doesn't have a smart disc, but he has all the other things that would go along with him, like, for example, the skull and spine, which I have the figure displayed with right now. Something you may not, though, see him displayed with is one of the other alternate head sculpts that comes included with that seem to be once again carried over from the comic Elder Predator we did get before, but much more refined when it comes to the color schemes. Though I like the look of the helmets, I honestly don't think it works as well with the figure's body, because he's so pale in nature from head to toe, really. The moment you start to change his head out, I think it sort of is jarring for the rest of the figure's body, and plus as well, the paint is handled so good here on the Elder Predator, which is the defaulted head. I'm going to stick with that when it comes to displaying this guy on the shelf. What do you guys think of Elder Predator or Golden Angel? Nice looking figure, isn't it? If you have had the chance to pick up this figure for yourself, let me know of the 3 head sculpts, the 3 ones available from NECA. Which one did you end up going with when it came to displaying this guy on the shelf? Once again, though, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Predator 2 Ultimate Elder Predator. And we got the chance to have a look at this review. Speaking, though, of reviews, if you don't mind me saying, if you just enjoyed finishing watching the one that you just did, why not throw it a like? Why not? It helps me. It helps the algorithm. It helps to show that you're enjoying the content you're seeing here on this channel. Also, if you are new here, and this is the first time you stumbled onto this channel, welcome. Come on in. There's snacks galore over there on the table, what's left of it at least. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and that you're also turning on the bell notification. We are also going to be looking at some more NECA reviews coming your way. That seems to always be the case here on this channel. More NECA, more NECA, more NECA. Well, there are going to be more NECA reviews coming your way. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.